Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the House Committee on Higher Education and Technology for our 2 p.m. agenda. To begin, I will ask Vice Chair Clark to please go over our ground rules for this Zoom hearing.
Thank you, Chair. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please keep yourself muted and your video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. The Zoom chat function will allow you to chat with the technical staff only. Please use the chat only for technical issues. If you are disconnected unexpectedly, you may attempt to rejoin the meeting. If disconnected while presenting testimony, you may be allowed to continue if time permits. Please note the House is not responsible for any bad internet connections on the testifier's end. In the event of a network failure, it may be necessary to reschedule a hearing or schedule a meeting for decision-making. In that case, an appropriate notice will be posted. Please avoid using any trademarked or copyrighted images. Please refrain from profanity or uncivil behavior. Such behavior may be grounds for removal from the hearing without the ability to rejoin.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair. First up, we have House Bill 2220, appropriating funds for the University of Hawaii Nursing Program. We have, let's see, in our testimony, we have written comments from the Department of Budget and Finance. We also have testimony from the Interim Dean and Professor of the UH School of Nursing, Clementina Seria Ulep. Doctor, are you?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you very much.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Chair Gregg Takayama and Vice Chair Linda Clark and members of the committee. My name is Clementina Seria Ulep. I'm the Interim Dean for the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Nancy Atmosphera Watts School of Nursing. Used to be School of Nursing and Dental Hygiene. So thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in strong support for House Bill 2020. And this bill appropriates funding to the University of Hawaii to increase the state's capacity to train new nurses and project future nursing workforce needs. So the testimonies before you, and in the interest of time, I will answer questions that you may have as it relates to what I have submitted. And I do stand by my testimony, and I do want to thank the committee for your support of the schools of nursing in the UH system to address these workforce needs and the need for more nursing faculty. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dean. Next up, we have from the Hawaii State Center for Nursing, Laura Reichart.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama and Vice Chair Clark. Thank you so much for hearing this measure, HB 2220. This is related to increasing the number of nursing instructors for the University of Hawaii Schools of Nursing, as well as supporting funds for nursing projection. As it relates to nursing instructors, our clinical education environment has greatly changed. Most of our healthcare facilities are now requiring or allowing fewer students on the units than before. So there used to be cohorts of 8. Now there's 4 to 6 students allowed. So that's doubling the amount of teaching faculty that need to come on site with those students. It's critical to get hands-on education. And so this line of teaching staff is critical, not just for continuing the education, but entering practice as a nurse with competency, with comfort, caring for patients. That hands-on knowledge is critical. And we know that this environment has changed, and we're not looking at it changing back to what it was before. And so helping us realign is crucial to the longevity of the nursing workforce profession. We know that we're having more nurses burn out. So we need to get these students in, and we need the nursing faculty and the whole schools of nursing to be well supported to move this forward. We also know that the COVID pandemic has greatly impacted the nursing workforce in our state, and we are now in a crisis of a nursing shortage. And in order to appropriately plan, we need to use the data that we have available today: workforce supply, education capacity, workforce demand, and then use that for projections. The projections are a different type of work than all of the research happening in our state today by many partners, including the Center for the Nursing. And this will help us align and strategize appropriately to our projected needs. And hopefully, if we project a gap, we'll be able to close that gap and not have further shortages in the future. We successfully did that in 2003, and we staved off a nursing workforce shortage over the following decade. And we're actually in quite a good place in 2019 until the pandemic hit. So we'd like to get back to that place, and we need some more knowledge. This bill will really help both our schools of nursing and our state overall. And I want to just greatly thank you for prioritizing this issue, hearing this measure, and finding solutions that will have immediate and long-term impacts.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we have written testimony from the Hawaii State Rural Health Association in support, as well as from Hawaii Pacific Health, Michael Robinson in support, the Healthcare Association of Hawaii in support, UH Maui College, Mary Farmer in support, Kathleen Yokuuchi in support, Elena Kabatu, East Hawaii Region of Hawaii Health Systems Corporation in support. And we have also written, I'm sorry, I missed one, Julia Lindberg, Stephanie Marshall, Denise Cohen, all in support, along with Kathleen Hagan. Is there anyone I missed who wishes to testify on House Bill 2220? Seeing none, I'll open it up to questions. Members, any questions? Seeing none, let me, if I could, ask Laura Reichert some follow-up questions. Just to make it clear, this bill suggests $1.8 million, and it would provide for 39 instructor positions for nursing, and this would be spread out among UH Manoa, UH Hilo, as well as our community colleges. Is that right?
Correct. That's Hawaii Community College, Maui College, Kauai Community College, and Kapiolani Community College as well.
Okay. Now, how many, in your estimation, additional students would this enable you to train?
So this measure would enable about, if we do the math, I believe it's about 240 students. And I don't want to mischaracterize. This will help realign with the enrolled students today. It won't necessarily increase enrollment because the schools of nursing have had, for their currently enrolled students, have had changes to the faculty and student ratios allowed onto clinical education. That said, because we had very large faculty shortages, several of our schools did decrease their enrollment, and the hopes is that this support staff would help them come back to full enrollment instead of the reductions that we experienced in fall 2021.
So these instructors would enable you to avoid any cuts in student enrollment, and hopefully in the future enable you to continue on a so-called normal enrollment pattern.
Correct. And it would also provide the opportunity for the schools. I think I was reviewing the testimony, and several leaders within the schools are saying they're teaching every day this week. So it would also enable these people who serve in administrative roles as well as teaching roles to take the time to plan for increasing their enrollment if needed. And I think that's very critical, that we don't want to have knee-jerk reactions, that these need to be measured plans for the future. And having the needed instructors will enable for that planning that meets the future needs of our state.
Okay, thank you. My last question is, all of the testifiers referred to the fact that we have a shortage, critical shortage of nurses in our facilities, hospitals, and clinics. What is it that will attract them to be instructors as opposed to possibly more lucrative positions in hospitals or elsewhere in private practice?
That's a great question, and that's a very challenging question. I think the fact of the matter is that becoming a nursing faculty comes along with a reduction in salary and quite a bit of work. It's a challenging role, and it's complicated, and it's that the future of the nursing workforce depends on how good of a job you're doing. So it's a big undertaking. That said, I think people who go into teaching are passionate about it. And oftentimes you have nurses who are thinking about teaching and would like to get their foot in the door. And the clinical instructor role is a common way for nurses, clinical nurses, to enter into the nursing academia career or specialty.
Is it? And then just thinking personally, we would talk about burnout among nurses and, certain hospital settings. Is this sort of an alternative for those who might seek, another path career-wise?
I think it could be. I think if you're a nurse and you are considering that you have time to do more, or you're willing to do more, and you have the opportunity to take on what essentially would be a part-time engagement, maybe you're only teaching one course, that may be enough for you to stay in your region instead of thinking about looking at other opportunities out, off island or perhaps even out of state. I do want to say logistically, the Center for Nursing, we do not engage in teaching, and Dr. Clementina Surya-Ulep is here today. So if you have specific questions about recruitment of nursing instructors, I think she is much more expert at that field, and I would, welcome you to ask those questions to her because I don't want to be remiss in my answers.
Thank you. But I think we covered that issue, but I appreciate your comments. And if there are no more questions from members, let's move on to the next bill, which is House Bill 1488, relating to residency tuition at the University of Hawaii. And first up, we have Deputy Attorney General Laurie Tanigawa.
Good afternoon, Laurie Tanigawa, Deputy Attorney General. The department submitted its written comments, which we appreciate the committee's consideration of, and I'm available if there are any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. University of Hawaii, Hei Okimoto.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. I am Hei Okimoto, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs for the University of Hawaii System. I stand on my written testimony in support of this measure, and I, along with Tammy Chun, Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs for the UH Community College System, are available to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much. Next, we have, let's see, Department of Education.
Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee. I am Terry Ushijima, Interim Assistant Superintendent with the Department of Education, testifying on behalf of Interim Superintendent Keith Hayashi. The Hawaii State Department of Education supports HB 1488, extending the resident tuition fee at any University of Hawaii campus to individuals who earn a Hawaii high school diploma, and others described in the bill has a potential to positively impact students who wish to pursue higher education within the UH system and reduce barriers students may face when applying to UH. The department defers to the University of Hawaii on the implementation of these changes. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 1488.
Thank you very much. Let's see, we have testimony from the Pono Hawai'i Initiative in support, as well as statements from several individuals, all expressing support. If I missed anyone, is there anyone out there who wishes to testify on House Bill 1488? Please let me know. And I see none. Members, any questions? Seeing none, can I go to, let's see, UH, hey, Okimoto? I have a question. Hi, my question deals with what is the current policy of the UH in terms of accepting for residency tuition purposes high school graduates who may have moved to the mainland temporarily or done some other activity?
Currently, when the student, in this particular question, if a student has left the state and is returning and applying to the university, we do ask them questions about to determine their residency status. So for example, if they are a minor and they have not, and they are claimed as a dependent of a parent who is still a Hawaii resident, then they would be considered a resident. If they have moved away and obtained residency in a different state, then of course we would consider them as a non-resident until they've returned and have been physically present for 12 months, registered to vote and pay taxes.
So basically you have to be, if you move to the mainland like Las Vegas, live there for 8 months or so, come back, you can do it up at the clock starts running for 1 year. You have 1 year, in other words, to come back as a resident tuition.
Yes, well, actually, what it really is dependent upon, yes, there's our Hawaii state rules state that you have to be physically present for 12 months and have and
okay, all right, live here for 1 year. Okay,
right. And so that's that's the determination here, and that they are not a resident of a different state.
Okay, so this bill, well, I guess the next bill is the one proposed by UH, which proposes modification of that policy as well as this bill. So let's hold off on questions on that for now.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, okay, let's move on to the next bill, which I referred to. House Bill 1770, also relating to UH tuition. And let's see, we have from the Attorney General's Office, Lori Tanigawa.
Good afternoon again, Chair Lori Tanigawa, Deputy Attorney General. The department submitted its written comments and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Okimoto, University of Hawaii.
We also support this bill and we are ready to answer additional questions.
Okay, thank you. Department of Education.
Good afternoon again, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and members of the committee, Terry Ushijima here again. The Hawaii State Department of Education supports HB 1770, simplifying the residency determination for Hawaii's high school students and graduates, increases access to post-secondary education. The department identifies nearly 3,600 students in unstable housing across the state who fall within the group this bill targets. This bill has the potential to positively impact the future of these students, as well as other students with challenges in determining Hawaii residency who wish to pursue higher education within the University of Hawaii system. The department defers to the University of Hawaii on the implementation of these changes. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 1770.
Thank you very much. And that's all the testifiers we have on this bill. So members, any questions for our testifiers? Seeing none, may I go back to
Representative
oh, I'm sorry.
Kapela.
Representative Kapela, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. My question, I think, is for University of Hawaii, and I think it kind of applies to both the previous bill as well as this one in regards to residency. We're seeing a lot of students who maybe go to a school in a different state, but they're still living here at home because of COVID. And they're going to school online. So I was wondering if that student then decides technically their residency is still here. So they would still, if they wanted to, they could just reapply for UH and that wouldn't apply to them, correct?
Correct.
Just because they're going to, okay. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, hey, if I could go back to you, can you explain how this HB 1770 would change the current policy, which you said explained earlier is you have to live here at least 1 year?
So I think part of the benefit of this is that we're looking at students who have been physically here for 12 months and they're applying. This will help us reduce the number of questions we ask of our students so that it'll simplify the process, because having the Hawai'i high school diploma, having been here for the 12 months prior to the start of the semester, that will pretty much help capture them as resident status.
So let me ask.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah. Let me ask you a follow-up question, and this sort of combines what we heard on the previous bill and this one. Rather than have to go through the process of determining residency or not, what if we suggested a process by which when you graduate from high school at that time, the clock begins running. And we set a time period for when you would be eligible. And this gives a student time to, I don't know, go hiking on the mainland or get a different job in another country and then decide to come back after 2 years or 3 years and still qualify for resident tuition. Would that be an alternative that's acceptable to you each?
I think so. I think part of our concern is that, we want to be able to ease the process for students to apply for the university and be considered resident for resident tuition purposes. As long as it wasn't violating any other rules that we have in the state, we are pretty flexible on that. Tammy is also available here with us to answer or maybe further elaborate, but yes, we are acceptable because we do want our students to make it as easy as possible. And I think it was alluded to in a previous question, because our students are oftentimes in the other part of the side of the story is our students are often in homeless situations or they have to be moving around between Hanai parents, et cetera, that having this sort of time frame helps get them to be able to be considered resident without undue stress of answering multiple questions.
Understood. Tammy, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'm Tammy Chen, Associate Vice President for the community colleges. And what this legislation would do is say that being here for 12 months as a high school graduate would be sufficient to make you a resident. And it wouldn't require that the applicant provide information about taxes, because if they're 18, they might be referring to their parents' tax status or a guardian's tax status. So that's what would make it easier. So your suggestion, Rep. Takayama, that says that a student would be considered a resident based on the basis of their high school graduation for a time-limited duration would be appropriate.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Seeing no other questions, let's move on to the next bill, which is House Bill 1731, relating to the UH Promise Program, extending the current Promise Program to 4-year universities. And first up, we have Laurie Tanigawa, Deputy Attorney General.
Good afternoon again, Chair. Laurie Tanigawa, Deputy Attorney General. The department submitted written comments, which we appreciate the committee's consideration of, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have comments offered by Craig Hurai, Director of BNF. Next up, University of Hawaii System, Hei Okimoto.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee again, and we definitely support this measure, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. let's see, we have testimony from Kamehameha Schools in support, as well as an individual, Alex Miller, in support. Okay. At this point, we'll open up for questions for any members. Seeing none, I have a question. Hey, if we could go back to you, and I wanted to ask you, expanding the Hawaii Promise program to 4-year campuses, how much money are we talking about? Roughly.
19 million. This is if we are going to cover all of the gap for the total cost of attendance.
19 million is what you said, 19?
19.
Okay. And this would apply the same gap group standards as we do for the current community college students under
Correct.
the Promise program. Okay, thank you. And let me, I understand that from under the current program, there are about 1,800 students who attend community colleges with assistance from the Promise program. Is that correct?
This is Tammy Chen from the community colleges. That's correct.
Okay. And so assuming that we are able to pass this bill, how many students do you foresee could be increased in terms of their 4-year education? How many students would be covered by this program?
Oh, so that would be adding the baccalaureate programs would increase the number. I believe here that the number was about 2,000 additional students. Let me look it up. But I believe it's about 2,000, a little over 2,000.
About
A little over
2,000.
2,000.
So it'd be a total of nearly 4,000 students total if additional funds were added for the baccalaureate programs.
Oh, you're saying 2,000 plus the current 1,800 in community colleges. Okay.
Correct. So 1,800 was the number that we awarded last academic year, and we're at about 2,000 for this year for
Okay.
the current Hawaii Promise.
Thank
Oh.
you. That's very helpful.
I guess maybe let me kind of expand a bit. The total for the 4-year students, for the 4-year campuses, if we were going to be doing this based on our 2021 numbers, it would be about 4,600 students.
So I apologize. So hey, that's 4,600 for the baccalaureate campuses plus 2,000 for the community colleges. Okay.
4,600 at the 4 years. Okay.
Correct.
And that would be covered with the 19 million.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. No other questions? Let's move on to the next bill, actually final bill on the agenda. No, yeah, final bill on the agenda. House Bill 2206 relating to the UH athletics program. And let's see, we have Department of Budget and Finance, Craig Hirai, offering comments. And we have testimony from David Matlin, University of Hawaii Athletics Director.
Aloha, it's David Matlin, University of Hawaii Manoa Athletics Director. Good afternoon, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on House Bill 2206 to support both the University of Hawaii Manoa Athletics as well as University of Hilo Athletics. I stand by my written testimony, but if time permits, I could give some more specifics on allocations based on the amount in the current bill. I understand that if adjustments are made, we could adjust our allocations based on priorities.
Okay, thank you very much. From, let's see, UH Hilo, we have Patrick Gillen, Athletics Director. Patrick?
Aloha, Chair Takayama, Vice Chair Clark, and the rest of the committee members. Thank you for allowing me to be here to testify on behalf of House Bill 2206. We would like to stand on our testimony at this point, and certainly I'm available to answer any specific questions that you might have. I would like to add, and I apologize on a personal note, Chair Takayama, I saw my dear friend Jerry Chang this morning, and he made me promise to say hello to you. So I'm fulfilling that promise.
Thank you. Always nice to hear from our former colleague in the House. Thank you. Any other persons wishing to testify on House Bill 2206? Okay, seeing none, let me start with Patrick, UH Hilo.
Yes, sir.
Since you're there. The bill proposes adding $500,000 to your current athletic budget at Hilo. Can you talk about your current budget? And you note in your testimony is below the average of NCAA Division II institutions. What is the current amount you have in your budget?
Our current budget is $2.4 million. That's allocated to us by the university.
Okay, so $500,000 would be a substantial increase to you.
Yes, it would.
Do you have, what women's sports do you have at the UH Hilo?
We have 7 women's sports and 5 men's sports. On the women's side, we have cross country, women's soccer, women's volleyball, women's basketball, softball, women's tennis, and women's golf.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you. I appreciate that. That's very helpful. Now, if I could go to Mr. Matlin, I wanted to follow up on your testimony. You made reference to the fact that, well, first of all, the bill proposes an additional, proposes $14.5 million at UH Manoa, substantial amount. You mentioned that part of it could be used for the expansion of the TC Ching complex from its current 9,000 seats to 15,000. How much of the money would be used for that purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. For the Clarence TC Ching expansion, which is kind of an NCAA requirement as we move forward. Right now we have, based on our other priorities, we have about 7.3 million of those funds that would be used for Clarence TC Ching. That doesn't get us all the way home, but it's a significant portion. We'd still be able to add to some other priorities also.
Okay. And you also mentioned in your testimony that a substantial amount is spent by UH for travel subsidies to other teams, which we are obligated to provide. How much money would that be involved?
Yeah, the delta compared to our competitors, what we have to pay in travel subsidies and for our conference members, which is very rare, no one else really does that, and the incremental costs we have to do to get teams here is about 2.2 million.
And on the other side, this would help us pay for travel of our own teams to wherever they're playing. And how much would that be a similar cost?
Yeah, that's about 1.9 million, just a little bit under 2 million. That's the incremental cost that we absorb based on our geography.
Okay. I guess there might be concern, David, on the part of some people that we often link football with the athletics program, but under Title IX, we're required to provide an equal allocation to women's athletics. So how much of these funds could be used for women's?
Yeah, the good thing is besides the Clarence TC Ching thing, all the funds would be used for equally for both programs, whether it's for nutrition, to health and wellness, the travel and all that. We would do it in a gender equitable manner.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. So I appreciate both testimony from both of you. And seeing no other questions, let's recess for decision making. convening the Higher Education and Technology Committee. For decision-making, first up, we have House Bill 2220. I'm going to suggest a House draft deleting the $1.8 million figure and adding a defective date of July 2050, and noting in the report language that should the Committee on Finance decide to consider this measure, that we are proposing $1.8 million, which would provide for 39 nursing instructors who would be able to provide instruction to about 240 UH students at UH Manoa, UH Hilo, as well as several community colleges. Let's see. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, could you take the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Now voting on HB 2220. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Bellotti.
Aye.
Representative Ganadin.
Aye.
Representative Gates.
Aye.
Representative Hashimoto.
Aye.
Representative Kapela.
Aye.
Representative Ono.
Aye.
Representative Quinlan is excused. Representative Woodson.
Aye.
Representative Yamane.
Aye.
Representative Okimoto.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next two bills deal with the UH tuition, HB 1488 and HB 1770. It's going to be my suggestion that we combine the two. They're very similar. The major difference is that House Bill 1488 suggests that after the time of graduation, that a former high school graduation, that a graduate be allowed 12 years during which time he or she could establish residency in another state, another country even, and come back and still be eligible for residency tuition. I thought 12 years was a bit long. And so I'm going to suggest that upon graduation from high school, that the clock begin running and that person, any graduate, be allowed 8 years to enroll at the University of Hawaii as a resident for tuition purposes. As I said, with the clock running from the time of high school graduation from a Hawaii high school. A couple other technical changes as well as defecting the date. So members, any questions or comments? Again, we'll use House Bill 1488 as the vehicle for this. Members, any questions? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 1488. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Quinlan. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? With all members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Let's see, House Bill 1770 will defer. Next bill, House Bill 1731 relating to the UH Promise Program extension to all four-year campuses. Chair's recommendation is to move this forward with House draft. Adding in the Attorney General's recommendation that we note that this is a matter of statewide concern and do so in section 1, second paragraph, third line, which says that the legislature further finds an educated labor force is essential in today's global knowledge-based economy and therefore a matter of statewide concern. We'll also add a defective date and suggest in the report language that if the Committee on Finance decides to consider this bill, that the amount of $19 million be considered as an appropriation, and that amount would enable about 4,600 four-year students to acquire education at a four-year institution at UH. Members, any questions or comments or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 1731. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Quinlan. Are there any members voting no? Any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. The final bill is House Bill 2206 relating to appropriations for the UH athletics departments at UH Hilo as well as UH Manoa. Chair's recommendation is to move this bill forward with an amendment defecting the date and also taking out the suggested amounts from the bill and adding in the committee report that should the Committee on Finance consider this measure, that it consider the amount of approximately $14.5 million for Manoa, which would provide for expansion of the TC Ching complex to NCAA requirements, as well as provide funding for travel and athletics, meals for athletes, as well as other health and wellness initiatives. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Now voting on HB 2206. Chair's recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the absence of Representative Quinlan. Are there any members voting no? Are there any members voting with reservations? With all other members voting aye, the chair's recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. That concludes our hearing. Just a final announcement that we have a 3 p.m. Joint informational briefing with the Committee on Finance to learn about the state's progress in modernizing its various budget and bookkeeping systems. You can do so either by Zoom, or you can come to this committee hearing room to do so.